Hi, here we are. Thank you, Chris, for joining us. Really appreciate it. I know your time was really tight today. Great job on the debate.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
This morning. Glad you come to Eastern Connecticut. We just got a few questions for you.
Sure.
You're in public access, so thanks for joining us. We actually like to hear what things you've worked on in Congress already and in the state legislature. You've got experience representing Connecticut already, and that's a big plus in our opinion.
Well, I'll tell you just a little bit about my background. I mean, I grew up here in Connecticut. Both sides of my family grew up here in Connecticut. My grandfather worked in the factories of New Britain. My mother is a public school teacher in Wethersfield. And, I was just raised to believe that I needed to live my life in a way that gave back to the people of this state and to the state that mattered so much to us. And so I've chosen to spend a good part of my career in public service. I was in the state legislature for 8 years, and now I've been in Congress for 6 years. I've worked on issues that really matter to the middle class, the people and the families that I grew up with. That's why I've worked so hard in healthcare reform. I'm just a believer that no one in this country should go ill, should be denied healthcare treatment just because they don't have the money, or that they should lose their house and their savings just because of a medical condition. And so in the state legislature, I was the leader on the fight to expand healthcare coverage in Connecticut, and in Congress, I was really proud to play a part in passing the healthcare reform law. I've also worked hard on manufacturing issues. I mentioned that my grandfather, but also my great-grandfather, worked in the ball bearing factories of New Britain. Those jobs are gone, but it doesn't mean that we can't still make things in this state. In fact, I don't think we can, prosper as an economy if we aren't making things. And so I started something in Washington called the Buy America Caucus, which is a group of Republicans and Democrats that are fighting for a pretty simple premise that when our taxpayer dollars go to Washington, that they should be used to buy things here in America for the Department of Defense, Homeland Security, Department of Transportation. We think we could create 600,000 new manufacturing jobs just by closing the loopholes in the Buy America law. So, there are a lot of things that I care about that I've worked on over my decade plus in public service, but healthcare reform and manufacturing policy are at the top of the list.
Great. Yeah. Could you defend healthcare reform just quickly? It's a big issue, and I know Linda says she would repeal it and maybe replace it.
Well, listen, it would be a disaster if we repealed healthcare reform. For the seniors that right now are paying half as much for their drugs in the donut hole, the prescription drug benefit, they would have to pay more out of pocket. For women who are finally going to be able to pay the same rates as men, now that the law bans gender as a pre-existing condition, they would lose that protection. For the families out there who right now are bleeding through their savings simply to pay for a family illness, their help that's going to come when they finally have access to affordable healthcare insurance would fall apart. So my focus is on perfecting that bill, making it work better, not repealing it. And listen, Linda McMahon, she doesn't need healthcare coverage. She, has, millions of dollars that she makes every year. These kind of programs are essential for the middle class and for the poor. They're not as important for Linda McMahon, apparently.
I think it's interesting that she says she's a woman, therefore we think she's pretty good at women's issues. But you actually are very popular with women other than your wife, including your wife, and it's because of issues. And I'll talk just briefly about that.
Yeah, I mean, I've dedicated my life to standing up for women's health care and a woman's right to choose, and it's actually been my wife's career commitment as well. She was the board chair of Connecticut's NARAL chapter for years, and that's been my career, is fighting to protect Roe versus Wade, fighting to protect women's health care. And Linda McMahon has some pretty extreme views on this issue. Not only would she support Republican leadership in Washington that would stop at nothing to repeal Roe versus Wade, but she herself has said that she would vote for a right-wing plan that is currently being debated in Washington that would allow any employer to deny their female employees coverage for contraception and prescription birth control. And what she says is exactly what you suggest. She says to women across the state, don't pay attention to what I believe, just pay attention to my gender. That's insulting to the women of this state. Her election would be bad for women who care about their access to full reproductive health care rights and full preventative health care benefits, and my entire career has been devoted to protecting those causes.
What's the top issue you would like to work on in the Senate?
Well, this is all about jobs right now. I mean, these issues that we're talking about, women's health care and healthcare reform, are important, but people really need to be put back to work. And Linda McMahon's plan to just give another round of tax cuts to the wealthy, to refuse, as she does, to take on tax breaks for outsourcers, it would kill jobs. My plan is very different. I want to focus tax cuts for the middle class, who actually go out and spend the money immediately in the economy, creating jobs on Main Street. I want to invest in things like education and infrastructure and science, the drivers of real long-term economic growth. This race really has to be about who's going to do better for job creation. And Linda McMahon's economic policies are just a resuscitation of the same failed trickle-down supply-side economics that got us into this mess in the first place. I want to do something different. I want to focus on tax cuts for the middle class, and I want to focus on investing in our people.
You've been working with a Congress that's controlled by the Republicans, the gray and no party, as I like to call them now. How is that going to work if the Republicans still are in control? How do you see yourself working in that situation?
Well, listen, I hope that this is a referendum, this election is a referendum on their obstructions. This economy would be recovering at a faster pace if the Republicans had agreed to work with the president on trying to come up with some solutions. And I have a history of reaching out across the aisle, whether it was the legislation I passed to expand the number of supportive housing units built for the disabled, or whether it's my work on the Buy American cause. I've always found Republican partners, and I'm going to do that in the United States Senate. Linda McMahon is one of these people who said that she would never ever vote for a tax deal that had $10 in spending cuts for just $1 in tax increases. She's basically said she will side with the obstructionists if she's elected. I'm somebody that believes very deeply in my values, but I also believe that part of my job description as United States Senator will be to sit down and negotiate a compromise with the Republicans. Linda McMahon, on the other hand, has made it pretty clear that she has no interest in compromise if she's elected. I think Connecticut wants somebody who feels strongly about their convictions, but also is going to reach out across the aisle, and I'm going to do that.
Absolutely. Well, we wish you luck.
Thank you.
We hope you become our senator. I hope your family gets you back soon.
I
appreciate the time.
I miss my two little boys. I've got two little boys at home. They're probably not watching this show, but I'll say hello to them anyway. I'm looking forward to a good victory on November 6th.
And what do you do for fun?
You know what? I got to remember all the things that I do for fun. One of the things that I do for fun is I'm a very, very avid sports fan, a diehard Red Sox fan, and so the Red Sox at least picked a pretty good year to stink, because I didn't have to watch too much of them this year. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good luck.
What I said 2 years ago in 2016 is ringing true. That night when we were all crying and hugging and not realizing the reality that it just happened, I remember saying to people that this will be a moment that changes our party, because people are going to wake up. I thought that we were just going to get a light slap on the face to wake up. Trump has done much more than that. I would say that Trump has body slammed us, along with a lot of other reporters and all the way he talks. So the energy's been great. I mean, every place I've ever spoke, like I would say just even 2 or 3 years ago, to have 6 people, we would have been excited. Obviously, we're a little packed here tonight because there's a fellow by the name of Chris Murphy. I don't know if you heard about him, but I'm sure he's going to be here stumping for your vote. But the Democratic Party, to me, means a lot more, because the people that are up in the higher positions, like Joe Courtney came down and knocked doors on me, Chris Murphy coming down here, making sure that the bottom of the ticket is as strong as the top of the ticket. Asking me today, you sure you're knocking doors, Joe? Even though I haven't been a great boy this year, I've had a lot of stuff going on. That's the kind of the help that we have, and you don't see that on the other side. You know why you don't see the energy on the other side too? Is because tonight we're not going to talk about how we need to lock up those 1,500 people that are leaving their homes to try to find a better place, that we're not going to separate their kids from their families, that we're going to put good, strong gun laws to protect our families. That is the difference I see between Democrats and Republicans, and that's why right now I'm very, very proud to introduce you our current senator and next senator. Well, he is the candidate, right? Chris Murphy.
Thank you very, very much, Joe. As you know, everybody here was so excited when you stepped up to begin this journey a couple of years ago, and on the heels of everything you had done for the community already. Just so awesome to have you in place. Thank you to Chris and to Liz, who are both here and running fantastic campaigns. Of course, Nick. Here's Nick's signature. This is actually pretty cool, you guys. This is a fantastic headquarters, by the way, and very family friendly. You got the little daycare corner, and you got the punching bag for the kids to do battle with. So, but you obviously have just a fantastic town committee, a great slate running here, and I'm glad to be here with all of you, with Liz and with Chris and Joe and Nick, and of course with my great friend Joe Courtney. I know he's got a great team, as he does every 2 years, working down here in southeastern Connecticut. He's one of my closest friends in not just the business, but in life, and so it's always great to be on the ticket with him. So I just want to double down on what Joe said. I hope you're down here to make calls tonight, and so we're going to keep the speaking program pretty quick. But if you absolutely can't make calls tonight, then we're going to put you to work this weekend, and we're going to ask you to go out and recruit more people to come down and be with us, because I get it, like we are always coming down here telling you guys that this is the most important election of our lifetime, but like this year it's really true. This time it's like, I know we're a little bit like the boy who cried wolf, but like this time it's really true. And I just want to give you sort of my take on why that is, that won't be unfamiliar to you. First, let's just talk about the state level right now, right? We've kind of taken for granted that we, over the last 2 years, have had protection from the worst of the Trump agenda. Because we got narrow majorities in the House and the Senate, and because we have a governor who's fighting Trump when he's doing things that are bad for Connecticut. Well, all that can disappear in a couple weeks, and all of a sudden, the worst of the Trump agenda, whether it be his effort to destroy the healthcare system or destroy our environment or treat people that look different from him as threats, that all is going to be the reality here in Connecticut, because as ridiculous as Bob Stefanowski's tax plan is, I mean, he's going to gut half of the funding for the state, which, by the way, like this isn't hyperbole. If you do that, schools close on Fridays, right? Like you can't pay teachers, all right? What almost is more concerning to me is that Stefanowski hasn't said anything about anything else. He hasn't told us anything about what he thinks about healthcare or the environment or immigration or education. And I'm going to share a little secret with you. The reason he's not telling you what he thinks about those things is because he agrees with Donald Trump. Is because Donald Trump endorsed him the day after he won the primary, because he knows that Stefanowski is going to do his bidding here on all of those subjects. And so it's just another reminder that if you're upset, as you should be, about what this president is doing to tear our country apart, you got to win these state elections, because that is our defense. That is our primary defense in Connecticut against the worst of it. And the good news is you got great candidates. I mean, you got great people who have stepped up in these moments to represent you. So it's not just that they're fighting against Trump, it's that they're fighting for things too, fighting for you in Hartford. So I'm doing a lot of work for Ned everywhere across the state, and a lot of work for state legislative candidates, because I think it's that important. But at the federal level, Joe's right. This is a referendum on whether we think that our country should be locking little kids up in cages along the border. This is a referendum on reproductive choice, whether the government should be telling you what you can do with your body and what kind of health care you can get. It's a referendum on pre-existing conditions. Are we going to go back to the days when the insurance companies used to be able to tell you whether you could live or die? It's a referendum on all of those big ticket policy issues, but something bigger is on the ballot this year. Democracy is on the ballot this year. And here's my message, and it's a sober one. Just don't assume that this experiment we've been in for the last 240 years is going to hang around for another 240. Because what Donald Trump is doing is probing and pushing and poking at our democratic norms. And he's found that they're a little bit more fragile than we would have liked. There are a lot of people cheering his attacks on the free press. And I don't mean like, his verbal attacks, right? His cheering on of physical attacks on the free press. There are frankly a lot of folks in this country who aren't sure that the way we do things today is the most effective means, and that maybe we'd just be better off putting one person in charge of our government without all the checks and balances that are around him. And there are a whole lot of people in this country, unfortunately, who don't believe that our diversity in this country is our strength. They think it's a weakness. They want us to be defined by tribalism and by our differences with each other. At the root of this experiment are these radical ideas: equal protection and rule of law and strength and diversity. And they're being challenged right now. They're being challenged. And the ticket price of being an American citizen is that when that challenge comes, you stand up. You recognize that moment, you stand up, and you say that I'm going to do everything within my power to protect this fragile thing that we created in this country that nobody else could do the way that we did. And that we make sure that it perseveres for our kids and for our grandkids. And so democracy is on the ballot. If we lose, those rhetorical attacks on journalists become something much more real. The people investigating Donald Trump get fired the day after Election Day, right? Real consequences to this country and to the health of our democracy if we don't win. And so the stakes are so high. And so that's why I'm just excited that everywhere I'm going in Connecticut, Joe's right. Every place I go, there's bigger crowds than I've ever seen in this state. Rooms packed to the rafters, people who are opening their homes to phone banks that can't find enough chairs to fit all the people. That makes me feel great. But I also know that enthusiasm is high on their side too, because they know the stakes are high, and they know that Trump's agenda starts to fall apart if we win. So we got to do more. And I meant what I said. Obviously, come down here as much as you can. I'm preaching to the choir, but go out and find a friend who's never ever volunteered, who is just felt in their gut that what's going on doesn't smell right. Convince them to come on down. And along the way, remind people that I am on the ballot. I got to tell you, we're walking in, a few of us were coming in, and a woman who is just pulling out of one of the stores here stops, and she looks at me, and she's like, "Oh my God, you're the guy who walks across the state." And I was like, I'm not going to show that to the guys who do my TV ads because I'll have to pay them more money if they know that it's landing like that. But I walk across the state every year because it's the best way for me to understand what's on the minds of average, regular folks who frankly aren't plugged in like you are plugged in. But it also is a way for me to demonstrate to people how much I love this state, how much I value the chance that I've been given to represent this state in the United States Senate. I can't believe that. My mom grew up in the housing projects in New Britain, Connecticut. She thinks it's a miracle that her son, one generation removed from poverty, gets to be a United States Senator. Only in this country could that happen. And there's not a day that goes by that I don't feel so lucky that you've given me the opportunity to do it. And I'm going to work just as hard in the next 6 years as I did in these last 6 years. While I am really focused on Ned and Susan and Joe and Chris and everybody who's running, I do appreciate the help that you're giving me, and I hope that you know that I want to do this together. If I do win another 6 years, I want you to make me a better senator. Give me your ideas, give me your hopes and desires of you and your neighbor, and hopefully I'll be able to deliver on the promise that hopefully some people in the state see in me. But this is big. This is really, really big. And I'll just end with this. My two little boys, they're 10 and 6, and they love this musical, Hamilton. And like I know every word of that musical now because they play it over and over again in our house. Anyway, there's this line in Hamilton. It says, "How lucky we are to be alive right now." And they're talking about the Revolutionary time and how lucky people are to be alive at that time. And I know that this feels like a gut punch every day from this administration when you got to listen to what he says about our country, watch his Twitter feed. But feel lucky that you're alive right now. Feel lucky that when the decision point came for this country, when we had to decide whether we are still in this thing together, that you were able to stand up and go door knocking, make phone calls, support candidates who believed in America like you believe in America. Feel lucky that at one of America's inflection points, you were alive. You were there to make a difference. I know it hurts sometimes to know that this is the leader of the free world, that this is the person that is the head of our country. But things change as fast as they change. And we have something to say about that in the next 14 days. So thank you, everybody. Go to work.
Okay, we get the cameras?
All right, because not everybody may have you may not know all these guys, so you guys should give them some instructions too here. So
Well, I failed in my duty. I guess we were supposed to work down. You know where I'm running for 41st. Do you want to speak first
Yep.
and then? Yep. This
So I've
is-
got the 40th, which is the other side, half of Groton, the best half of Groton, because I had some jobs. I've got EB in the Navy base, so who couldn't be happier to represent that part of Groton? Joe has the Mystic side, and I have the other side. So our race is, I can't echo what Chris said so much about how important it is to get the governorship in Hartford and to keep the House blue and try to turn that Senate blue. Because there are so many bad laws that Joe and I were defending last year. And if we could free up that time, we could help make our state better. We could help make our economy grow. Instead of fighting anti-abortion laws to try to kill them. Instead of fighting rules and laws to try to defund our schools. Instead of fighting anti-healthcare laws and anti-minimum wage laws. And to try laws that try to cut the taxes on only the wealthy and let those of us who are working class and middle class struggle. If we could free up that time, we could help our economy grow and get our state moving in the right direction and be there as a shining light so that our economy can be like Massachusetts, like Rhode Island, like New York, and flourishing instead of what we have today. So we need each and every one of you to get 5 friends, and we will be door knocking on Saturday. We'll be meeting up at 9 for instruction, going out at 10, doing the same thing again on Sunday. We will have phone makes every night here in this lovely spot between the package store and the barbecue place. You can't ask for more. Every night, 15 days, everyone's welcome to come here to help us get to Hartford, to help everyone else. And then we want Liz Schweibel to be there to join us.
Hi, so I'm Liz Schweibel, and there's really not much left to say that hasn't already been said. I feel the same way that now more than ever it's important for all of us to stand up and fight for the things that we believe in. And that's why I chose to stand up and fight and run for state representative for the 42nd District, which is Ledyard, Preston, and Montville. And what you all are here to do, what you've been doing, calling, knocking doors, that's one of the most important things that we can do in an election. That one-on-one contact with voters to help get the message out is incredibly important, and I am so thankful for each and every one of you for your support, your enthusiasm. It's really inspirational, so thank you so much.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for being here and supporting our efforts to help serve. I'm Nick Keppel. I'm the probate judge for the 4 towns, Stonington, Groton, Ledyard, and North Stonington. And my perspective is I see every day the suffering and the pain that people are in. These folks, Liz hopefully will join them, but they go to Hartford and DC and make tough decisions on policies that affect people. Here in Groton, I'm seeing those policies every day, and I'm here to tell you that your efforts today and over the next couple of weeks change people's lives. This isn't just nice to support candidates and policies. It's affecting the way people live their lives. And what we need to do is send to DC and Hartford the right people with the big hearts who are going to make the right decisions for these people that aren't as fortunate as some of us may be. And it's, the economy may seem like it's doing well and the stock market may be doing well, but there is still a tremendous amount of suffering out there and people who are living on the edge. And every minute that you spend thinking about them, it may be tiresome, but it makes a difference. So I can't thank you enough, and I can't encourage you to keep working for these fantastic people who who are making these tough decisions on behalf of people all over the state of Connecticut. So thank you so much.
Bob Statchin's not here because Bob is working really, really hard. I think, like Chris and I found out, making it there and realizing how much work it really is exhausting. But Bob
His mom's
realized.
here.
Where's Bob?
His mom's here.
Bob Statchin's mom's here, which is well, and we know we got to make a lot of phone calls. We know we want to win, and I'm just going to end you with this. If you want some motivation, the person that Liz Schweibel is trying to take out is one of 8 folks that voted for the protection of the parent and to keep the gay away, to pray the gay away. Where it was a bill that came out where they said it's not child abuse. In their opinion, these 8 folks that voted against it, 8 Republicans, that basically said, if your son or daughter are gay and you think that you want to send them to Georgia to become ungay, that is not child abuse, that is not the Connecticut state's business. That is the person she's looking to take out. So if that doesn't motivate you to make those phone calls tonight, I'm not really quite sure what would, but those are definitely not democratic values. It's one of the reasons I sat in that chamber and I was disgusted. And I had my stomach turning. I can't imagine the amount of stomach turning that happens down in
They're
DC.
all over in Washington, so we got more than 8 of them in Washington. Can I just acknowledge the mayor and the council members that are here? We have a bunch of them, and to the town committee, thank you so much. Much of the work that you do is unseen, but there is. Everybody knows that that you guys work here, and we're really grateful for that and for everything that the mayor and her team on the council have done. So I just wanted to make sure we acknowledge them. And of course, here in southeastern Connecticut, the coattails kind of work the other way. So generally, they work from the top of the ballot down, but they work sort of Keppel up in this part. So we're very reliant on the get out the vote of the probate judge operation here. So great. Thank you, everybody. Get to work.
Yep, we caught up with you in Westbrook 6 years ago.
Okay, great.
We were kind enough to let us have a few questions.
Good.
So we'd like to,
Do it again.
we're going to use that video and what you just did in a little bit.
See how much less hair I have 6 years later.
Oh, you're doing great. You look younger than you did then.
All right, ready?
Yep. Okay. We are very fortunate to have Senator Chris Murphy here in Groton at the headquarters. Just rallied the troops and gave us some really good insight into what's going on. I'd like you to just tell us your sense of how the 6 years went. I mean, it was a fast 6 years in some ways, and I'm sure it took forever for you.
Well, and very different the first 4 versus the last 2. I mean, this country was turned on its head by the 2016 election, and President Trump really presents some unique threats to our nation. The way that he, tries to divide us from each other, telling us that we should be scared of people who look different from each other. The way that he has sold off our foreign policy to the highest bidder. It's a very different world these days, and this election in many ways is a moral moment for the country as to whether we want to slide down a very dangerous road where we're defined by our differences, or where we endorse a president who lies on a daily basis, or we want to put some values back in public policy.
I thank you again for your work on healthcare, and tell us a little bit about how that's going, because you've been working on it for 6 years. I know you have.
Yeah, it's hard because President Trump is trying to really sabotage the healthcare system. He's upset that he couldn't get the Affordable Care Act repealed. The American public did not want it repealed. They want it perfected. They want us to work on it and fix things that don't work, but they also like the fact that insurance companies aren't really as in charge as they used to be. So we're going to continue to protect the Affordable Care Act. I really hope in the next term we can get a drug crisis. We've let these drug companies get away with murder, and we need to start using our power as a federal government to try to negotiate those prices down. So that's a project that I'll be spending some time on in the next term if I'm lucky enough to get reelected.
And your comments just now about democracy is at risk, and I feel, I guess, most threatened about that, because that affects everything. So you want to address that a little bit more directly?
Yeah, listen, you can't really fix anything else if you don't have access to a democratic government. And so it really pains me to see the president cheering on folks who are eliminating voters from the voting rolls in places like Georgia and Indiana. If we lose our ability to vote, then everything else is lost. If the press feels like they can't tell the truth without being physically attacked, if law enforcement becomes politicized under the thumb of the president, then our entire way of life starts to evaporate. And if you believe in America, that doesn't involve just putting a flag up in your front yard. That involves actually defending the things that make this country great, like the freedom of the press, like the independence of law enforcement, and like the belief in truth.
I have to ask you, because 6 years ago you mentioned your boys. Are you spending some time with your boys, I hope? And they're growing up fast, I'm sure. So don't lose it.
Yeah, they're 10 and 6, and they'll be out on the campaign trail with me this weekend. But I hope that they're proud of what I do. They're believers in in a lot of the work that I'm doing, especially on gun violence, because they go through the active shooter drills just like everybody else. So thank you very much for the time. So
at the last interview, you said that the Red Sox weren't doing well, so it wasn't a distraction. This year, it's a little different.
This year it's a little tough. Yeah, I have to late nights where I have to tape the games and go home and watch them after I'm done. So thank you very much.
Thank you
Appreciate
for what you're
it.
doing.
All right,
Appreciate
take
it.
care.
Good luck.
Thank you. Yep. All right. Hello. Goodbye. Take care, guys. Bye bye.
Correct.
Take care.
You will.